What's up, everybody? Exciting day on the way on Gojo and Golic. Plenty of news for your Thursday here, and it starts in the city of brotherly love. The Eagles have decided on yet another new voice in Jalen Hurts' ear. Will this shakeup actually open the door for another NFC East team to challenge the throne? And the second half of the NBA season gets underway today, but we got to open one present early last night. What we learned in the Hornets' nail-biting win over the Los Angeles Lakers, and as the debate rages on over QB1 in the upcoming draft, how high are we going to see Sanders or Ward go in April? All that and more coming up on Gojo and Golic right now. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. Fun show on the way. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and watch us here live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell, all that fun stuff. Gojo and Golic on YouTube. Fun one today, Four Nations final coming up tonight. Everyone's jacked up on hockey, so Shane O'Brien from Missing Curfew going to stop by and help us get ready for the boys tonight to try and put it online. U.S. versus Canada for all the marbles. We'll get into plenty of that stuff, Dad. The NFL's got a ton of money they're printing here, but I understand you got shook up yesterday. You were fish out of water somewhere. You gave me no other details besides that, so I want to hear what exactly went on with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 62 years old. There's not many places that I go where I'm just so out of place. And I don't say that I'm out of place that, oh my God, a guy shouldn't be in this place, because I think offensive linemen go get these done. But your mother went and got a mani-pedi yesterday, okay? And she got there and she texted me and she said, I forgot to bring cash for a tip. Can you bring me cash to tip? I said, sure. It wasn't too far from the house. So I drive over there, and she said, I'll let you know if I'm in the chair or if I'm in the parking lot. And as I got there, I said, I'm here. She said, I'm already in the chair. You have to come in and give me the money. I don't think I've ever been in a mani-pedi place. I don't. I walked in, Mike. I mean, it was overwhelming. there were 10 chairs facing each other, or 10 seats facing each other, so 20 giving manicures, and then you go left, and your mother's like, go left in there, and there's like 10 chairs facing each other, so 20 chairs, like you're almost sitting on top of each other giving pedis, and the place is packed. And your mother's like down the row, and I'm walking in between the people giving the pedis, like right there. I mean, I felt so out of place handing your mother the money and saying, I got to get the hell out of here. I mean, and again, it's not that a guy shouldn't get a mani or pedi. There were guys in there. I never would have gotten one because my nails are awful. My toenails and my hand nails are awful. And I wouldn't want to subject anybody to that. But my God, what a machine a place like that is. I literally, and your mother was laughing her ass off at me because she knew I felt out of place. But don't you, as like old linemen, don't you like as a group go get a pedicure or something? Or didn't you guys do that? But I was a fish out of water in that place.
Well, first off, do you know what they're short for? Because you said mani and pedi so many times, it makes me nervous that you don't know that they're short for something.
A manicure and a pedicure. Yeah, I mean, I know what,
all right,
I know what they are.
You said it so many times, and you called it the mani-pedi place. It's a nail salon, which is a wonderful, magical place that, yes, I have been to before. And Dad, I will say, it wasn't like a group activity. I've gone multiple times over multiple years. I haven't been, quite honestly, in too long, but I figured you'd have had more familiarity just from watching Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. Like the nail salon is a central fixture in that show, but it's, as you saw, not just a place to help launder money through for crooked lawyers, but it's actually a magical place. And Dad, to your point, I promise you, your nails are not the worst that they've ever seen. There's a beautiful camaraderie that comes with being inside the nail salon. And I'll say this, especially as a bigger guy. Like you talk about the fish out of water thing, that happens to me in really 3 places. Yoga and Pilates and nail salons, because they don't expect you to be there. Like you said, it's not like men shouldn't go there, but men often don't go there for reasons I still can't quite figure out. And so when you are in there, man, you become an oddity. Everyone kind of wants to be friends because they're not sure why you're there and they've got questions. It really becomes a fun meeting of the minds.
Listen, again, it has nothing to do with the place. It is all on me as a person that does not want to subject my fingernails or my toenails to anybody.
Oh.
I just don't want to do it. And like I said, your mother was just laughing hysterically at me, knowing that I felt so out of place. And there were so many people in there. I mean, and she was getting a pedicure at the time, and the seats are like, I mean, you're like the person you're sitting on
together.
either side, you're right there. There's no like
but Dad,
aloneness.
Oh no, it's a community effort there. Now, I've never done a manicure, and that side seems like you might get a little bit more room, but on the pedicure side, no. You're suited up there, and they're comfy chairs. You get to soak your feet in water for a little while. Dad, the real winner here, too, you're focused on the nails. It's the foot play. They'll go and scrape the calluses off the bottom of your feet. That was where I felt bad. The poor woman there, it was snowing over where she was under my feet, but they'll put your feet in bags of paraffin wax. You'll get a little, I got a back massage in the like when I was sitting in the chair getting a pedicure. You need to try it. It's a wonderful experience.
I don't think I'll ever try it. I don't think I can bring myself to expose my feet.
There's no reason not to. It feels good.
It's me. It's me. It's not them. It's me. It's like a relationship I'm talking about. It's not you. It's me. It's me. I just can't sit there and expose my feet and my toenails to somebody to work on them. It's completely me. I know. I've heard nothing but great things about it. I have. I just can't get over the fact of me exposing my toenails to a stranger and having them work on them. It's so weird. It's so odd because, listen, I get massages all the time. I do that. I love that. But just how crowded it was, Mike. Oh my God. It's like a communal thing. It's not like an individual thing. It's like a communal thing.
I don't know what it is with your generation's hesitant with feet. We sell feet picks all the time. We got whole internet empires dedicated to throwing feet for free on. Well, not for free online. You pay handsomely for feet. So we gotta break you through this. At Gojo and Golic on Twitter, make the pitch for my dad to go get a manicure or pedicure. My mom just texted me and said you would need to quit picking at your own toenails, which is the real issue here, which is actually something that I kind of suffer from too. So as someone often chastised for gnawing on my paws. So we're going to get you over this hurdle. I feel like this would be a great side quest for you. And again, it really is a gift that I promise you, Dad, it's the main character syndrome. They've seen worse than anything you are going to throw at them by a country mile. You are not that nasty. As much as I want to give you grief, you're not that nasty. And so they've seen true nasty. They are forged in the fire. That's what they lift all them weights for down there in the chair. And you just tip them handsome. It's your favorite thing in the world. If you feel bad about that, throw money at the problem and tip them that way.
Yeah, I mean, I would tip handsomely. There's no doubt about that. But I just, again, it's a me problem, not a they problem. So I don't know if I'll ever get past it. I may just let that one go.
There we go. As my dad has said, he's opted out of learning, and so change is not something on the horizon for Dad in a lot of areas at life at this point in time here. Change is on the horizon, though, for the Philadelphia Eagles, Dad, and I'm wondering how far-reaching the effects for this can be. The Philadelphia Eagles announced the hire from within when it came for the offensive coordinator job vacated by Kellen Moore, who's now the Saints head coach. They promoted Kevin Patullo to the offensive coordinator position. He had been over and come over with Nick Sirianni since 2021 and had been with him in Indianapolis when Sirianni was the offensive coordinator there in various roles. He's known Nick for a long time, very well into what they do, and as the passing game coordinator in Philadelphia, has familiarity with Jalen Hurts, all these things that we know they're sacrificing, Dad, because famously now Jalen Hurts, who has not had the same coordinator in his ear for something like 9 years straight for 2 years in a row, now gets another guy who at the very least knows him. Jalen spoke very highly of him, but Dad, we also remember the last time the Eagles promoted from within in the long forgotten yesteryear of 2 years ago, where Brian Johnson takes over after being the quarterback's coach, and the rest is history. That season tanks, and it responds with a bunch of change that leads to a Super Bowl. So, Dad, how worried should Eagles fans be about a repeat of history in this situation?
Well, I mean, listen, you hire from within to to have the same scheme. Now, Jalen Hurts has had 4 different schemes and 5 different. Now, this will be his 5th different play caller. But again, the scheme will stay the same, but how you call plays will be different. And you mentioned it when Shane Steichen left to be when they lost both coordinators, Steichen to Indy and Gannon to the Cardinals. Brian Johnson, who was a friend of Hurts's, took over as the O coordinator, and that was the collapse in the back part of 23 where Sirianni, Brian Johnson, and Jalen Hurts just couldn't get on the same page. So I think it's a good move to hire from within. We'll talk about the Lions. They did the same thing with John Morton, hiring from within taking over as the O coordinator for Ben Johnson. I think it's a good, especially with a successful team, to kind of keep things the same. And you look at Kellen Moore coming in. I mean, Kellen Moore probably had the easiest road, right? Because it was a running game. It wasn't a complex passing scheme. It was a running attack that led this team. So you were living on running the ball. You were living on running the ball first and passing the ball second. Now, should you be able to do that again? Saquon Barkley is back. Your O-line is back. You should be able to live on it. So I would think you won't have the problems of the last time they hired within, bringing up Brian Johnson and going with Kevin Patullo. I would expect things to go smoothly, maybe not as smoothly, but it's as Jalen Hurts said. He says, "I'm out of the. I don't get to pick the coordinator. It's picked for me. I have to learn to work with said coordinator." But there's familiarity, and I think whenever there's familiarity, though we just said Brian Johnson, it didn't work well. But I do think overall, when there's familiarity, especially with the scheme, you're not changing verbiage, you're not changing terminology, you're not changing formations. I do think that's a better way to go.
Yeah, so Jeff McClain from the Inquirer in Philadelphia did say that this was the guy they identified pretty early once they knew Kellen Moore was going to leave. So there wasn't a big extensive search. That's a little worrisome to me. I am always of the ilk where promoting internally, not a bad thing. Rewarding people who have done right by you and done a good job for a long time that you and I identified and believe have fostered. Generally a good thing. But I always like to make sure, especially when the stakes are as high as Philadelphia, that you're getting the best candidate out of this. To your point about the run game, Jeff Stoutland's still going to be the run game coordinator, still going to be the offensive line coach. So that foundation that this is all really built on still lives in Philadelphia, but the guy hasn't called plays on any level ever. So that's going to be a big wild card in all this. To your point, is how they go about navigating that, especially early on in the season. The Eagles, though, well positioned to out-talent people in the interim while this goes along because Saquon Barkley ended up being such a hit for this run game. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith still live there, on and on down the list. And so, Dad, this more made me think big picture about the NFC, because when you look at all of the big-time contenders in the conference right now, there's a lot of them that probably feel like there's an opening and a chance, because so many of the best teams that we've seen in the NFC right now dealing with major change over the course of this offseason. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously, with another coordinator change in here. The Lions losing coordinators on both sides of the football, and their best defender in Aiden Hutchinson's coming off injury. The Vikings are a team that's probably going to be starting ostensibly a rookie at quarterback, and the 49ers won 6 games last year after being the perennial NFC power, while the bulk of their aging roster got injured. And so all of this leads to confidence from certain groups here. Rain Dakota Prescott, a.k.a. Dak Prescott, the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, got asked about their ability to go out and, to Emmanuel Ochoa's point, be an Eagles offseason away from winning a Super Bowl. How close are they? And this is what Dak Prescott had to say.
I mean, I feel like we compete with the Eagles and beat them for the most part when we played them. I don't want to say check the record when they're the guys holding the trophy right now. So credit to them. They've earned it and they deserved it by all means. But, yeah, very close, especially even watch the NFC game, the NFC Championship. And those two teams that we battle against each and every year a couple of times. And, as I said, feel confident about we've gotten the better part each and every time. To see them, to see it in such a dominating fashion, credit to them. It's our turn and it's on us.
Dad, Dak Prescott's confidence well-earned in the years where he's been healthy, because remember, he didn't play against the Eagles either game this year. That was Cooper Rush in both of those. But in every other year, basically, in this decade, they've split with the Eagles during the regular season. It has been highly competitive in the NFC East, but is he right, and should other teams in the NFC feel like there's an opportunity going into this next season because of all the change among the teams that either have been the names for a while at the top of the conference or were successful last year in the conference?
Well, I mean, you look at Detroit, lost both coordinators. Philadelphia losing their old coordinator. Tampa Bay, they won their division. They lost their coordinator, Liam Cohn, going to Jacksonville. Now, Minnesota lost their quarterback, but they still have Kevin O'Connell, who is, like McVay, a quarterback whisperer. The Rams still have McVay. Washington keeps Cliff Kingsbury, I think, which is huge for them. Green Bay stays pat on offense as well. So I while there is change at the top, Detroit, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, as far as division winners, as far as the offensive play caller is concerned, I think the Cowboys still have a long way to go. I mean, all this talk of one off season like the Eagles, which again, I mean, come on. You don't see many off seasons like the Eagles had. And to say that the Cowboys are one off season away from competing for a Super Bowl, I just don't see it. So I still think they're way behind the 8 ball. They have holes to fill down. They have great players at great positions: CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons. If they're looking to extend him, I know there's been talk of trading him, but I still think there's too many holes. I like their corners as well. I think there's still too many holes on the Cowboys to compete in suddenly a deeper NFC than we have seen in the past.
Well, that's what I mean. I think the door is open. And listen, the obvious answer to who's ready to walk through it is the Washington Commanders. They walked through it last year.
Yes.
They were in the NFC Championship game last year in year one of Jaden Daniels. But we all acknowledge that roster does have a ways to go. And so that's my worry for maybe a step back there is I think that roster far outperformed its capabilities in terms of talent. Green Bay's the one, and I know they got circled last year by everyone as a team in the second year of Jordan Love as a starter ready to make that next step. But, Dad, they're the one. We mentioned this talking about the Eagles offseason the other day. If you can add a dynamic pass rusher like a Khalil Mack that's going to become available here in free agency very soon, if you can add a true wide receiver one that can go out there and get you a bucket, that might be a little bit more, beauty in the eye of the beholder this offseason. But now all of a sudden you're talking about a team that in their own division, hey, you got a little bit of an opening right now because of all the change there, and certainly at the top of the NFC, that feels the same way. So if we're talking about pressure around the offseason, Green Bay certainly near the top of the list of teams that are feeling the heat in order to try and go and take that next step and see if they can capitalize on all of this change among so many of the other NFC elites. So at Gojo and Golic on Twitter, if you disagree and think there's another team that might have a good shot at going and knocking the Eagles off that perch. Right now, I'd probably still bet Birds, but there is a lot of time and a lot of change between now and then. Speaking of change, the NFL getting more of it put in their pockets, what it means for your favorite team. Next on Gojo and Golic. Money coming out. Dad, the NFL's rich again. Surprise, surprise. I am stunned every time this happens. I cannot believe the most powerful league in North American sports keeps finding a way to get away with this here. The NFL on Wednesday, according to ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter, and I believe Dan Graziano, informed teams that the salary cap for 2025 would be between $277.5 million and $281.5 million. Over the last 2 years, it'll have increased by $53 million, with last year showing the largest cap increase of all time, going from $224 to $255. So, Dad, the big takeaway here, your favorite team has no excuse because they just keep getting more money to spend.
Well, except if your favorite team is the Saints, because you're in such a cap hell.
Yeah, we should separate them off on. They're like the Hawaii of this conversation. They're in it, but they're definitely separate from what we're talking about here. Y'all got to reckon with that and mind your business.
But it just goes to show how much the league is making. I mean, the cap has gone up $53 million the last 2 years. So, and it's all based on revenue intake, and that's what they're still calculating between the NFLPA and the league to get to a number by March 12th, which is the beginning of the new league year. So while while football players still kind of love free agency and then sit in awe of NBA free agency afterward, going, oh my God, that's some real money going out. The money is increasing. The league, the NFL, makes the most money. It is split by more people because the rosters are bigger, but it makes the most money. So those that are looking for deals, the Jamar Chases of the world and the Micah Parsons of the world. I mean, you now have quarterbacks making over $50 million. You have wide receivers and edge rushers making over $30 million. So obviously the price keeps going up, except for running backs, that is. They're still hoping for an increase in their payday. But this is great for players. Great for obviously the owners are making money hand over fist, and that's one of their main concerns. But the players obviously want a piece of that and want to grab a big piece of the contract, and it's just going to do nothing but go up because the league is just unbelievably successful.
As excited as any team, I'd have to imagine the Cincinnati Bengals that have already come out and in so many ways stated their desire to retain T. Higgins along with Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson and Joe Burrow, who's already signed, but obviously is mentioned being a part of massaging his contract situation to help with the salary cap. Dad, this goes and makes all of that even more possible here and does kind of complicate, I'm sure the Bengals and trying to plan for this probably factored in, hey, we're going to see a pretty good bump in the cap by all estimations. And it sort of puts a damper on a wide receiver market in the NFL that you mentioned, Dad. Big money at wide receiver. Like I always go back to the Gabe Davis deal, 3 years and $50 million with like 25 of it guaranteed for a wide receiver that was an inconsistent number 2 at best in Buffalo that went down to try and help the situation in Jacksonville. T. Higgins, if he had actually hit the open market, God knows, while injury's been a part of the story, his skill set, his size, his ability to go out there, and we always say get a bucket in critical situations, would have been huge. But now it kind of makes for an interesting wide receiver market for this offseason. There are so many teams where outside of maybe offensive line, that is the most oft-referenced spot that people need to improve, wide receiver has become one that absolutely is a notable line item on so many offseasons. So, Dad, when we look at some of the wide receivers that could change place this offseason, I almost want to cross T. Higgins off the top of that list because I don't know if he's going anywhere. Tyreek Hill had stated his desire to maybe leave at the end of the season. Deebo Samuel recently given permission to request a trade. Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, on and on down the list. Is there a receiver on this list that you are most intrigued by or think could be the biggest help to his new team next year?
Well, I think Tyreek Hill and Deebo Samuel are trade, so you're going to have to give up assets for them. I don't think Tyreek Hill's going anywhere. I think he's staying in Miami. I don't think he's going to get traded. Deebo was told he could go ahead and look for a trade partner, so I think he's going to be gone. I think Devontae Adams is going to be gone. Cooper Kupp, they already talked about him being gone. I think for me, it's going to be Cooper Kupp because it's a guy when healthy it's just unbelievably open all the time. Now, will that work in another system? Because that's been in the McVay system, and then you threw Puka Nacua on top of that. And boy, what a dynamic duo that was, but injuries started to creep into Cooper Kupp's situation. So if he's healthy, he's the one that probably intrigues me the most. He is going to be 32. I mean, that's the one thing. Devontae Adams is going to be 32. Tyreek Hill is going to be 31. Deebo is still going to be under 30 at 29. Keenan Allen's a free agent, going to be 33. So guys are older and dealing with some injuries as well. You're trying to catch lightning in a bottle with them. But I would say Cooper Kupp, and I would look at a team like Pittsburgh as Pittsburgh not only looking for a quarterback but looking for a wide receiver as well. They had their Pat Freiermuth, their tight end, was their leading receiver over George Pickens by like 6 receptions. So I would say they're one team obviously looking for a quarterback and a wide receiver.
Yeah, they're an interesting one to keep in mind for all these. Cooper Kupp seems prime Chiefs territory. Like, I don't know how they'd make it work at this point, but he seems like the kind of player that coming towards the end of his career, they would like to stick on the side of this roster. Even though with Rashee Rice coming back healthy next year, it hardly feels like that's an area they're going to have to focus a lot on. O-line really seems like it could and should get the bulk of the work for them. And so Cooper Kupp, I wouldn't prefer Washington find a good young receiver. Like De'Ami Brown had a big postseason, but in general, opposite Terry McLaurin, you'd like to find a young guy to grow with Jaden Daniels at quarterback, or else I'd say, listen, veteran route runner who's good at getting open to go with a young quarterback at a time where you feel like, you can be in win now mode and also feel comfortable about your future. Would be an interesting fit to me there. A lot of these other ones, like Chris Godwin, I would expect and think going back to the Buccaneers would make sense for both parties there. We already mentioned T. Higgins. Tyreek Hill probably going to stay put as well. Davante Adams is a really interesting one to me, Dad, because the situation in New York was FUBAR for a lot of reasons. Him being brought over there mid-season because he was at one franchise that didn't have a quarterback and wasn't very good and went to another where he knew the guy that turned out to not be as good as he used to be. And late in the season, you saw a little bit more of a hit of the good stuff here. I still think he can be a guy that helps out a team, and maybe he's the kind of guy that can go in and help supplement a team that's getting close there, because I still think he's got good football left in him. He's just, I'm sure, done taking chances on quarterbacks. He'd probably like to go, and he's probably going to get the chance to go at a better number to a place that's got a firmly established quarterback that he can go out there and latch on with.
Yeah, I would agree. He's going to be 32 when the season starts, but he had 85 catches, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. Like I said, coming to the end of the season, really started looking like the Davante Adams that we knew. And a lot of these guys, you're only talking about a year or two with another team, right? Going to be 32, 33, 34 in the next couple of years. The youngest receivers out there may be available are Hollywood Brown. He's 28. And as I mentioned, Debo is 29. So the rest of them are over 30. So you're not looking for a long-term fix, which would lead me to believe that some of these guys are going to go to contending teams, to be ancillary products for a contending team, not necessarily the number one position, but to really bolster a receiving core for a contending team. Because if you're not a contending team, you're not getting a 32-year-old wide receiver. Look at Adam Thielen was up there in age, and he's done really well in Carolina, but Carolina's not going anywhere, right? So they're not going anywhere as of yet. So you feel you want to build with a younger players.
Well, you can't make him the crown jewel. Like Adam Thielen is the best wide receiver on your team. Not a great deal, but Davante Adams is kind of the guy that Buffalo was looking for. I wouldn't be surprised if they kick the tires on him, since Amari Cooper seemed to have some mitigating results, and Josh Allen is the kind of quarterback that anyone, especially Davante Adams at this stage in his career, would, I'm sure, bend over backwards for. The Los Angeles Chargers are going to be in the market for basically every receiver that we talk about in this conversation. There are very few that I would say wouldn't be a fit because, again, Justin Herbert in that offense just needs guys that can get open. So if it is free agent Amari Cooper, if it is, Davante Adams coming over from the New York Jets here, one of these guys is going to have to be the one they take a chance on.
I agree with the Chargers. They struck gold with Ladd McConkey, right? The two biggest rookie receivers were Georgia guys, Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers with the Raiders. But what Ladd McConkey was able to do when he was healthy was incredible. So you match an aging receiver with that young talent in McConkey, and I agree. I think the Chargers, because Jim Harbaugh isn't waiting to win. Jim Harbaugh won right away. I didn't think he would make the playoffs in his first year. He did. So he is certainly building.
Hey, man, just invite him over to the other side of the building here. The Chargers, what if they just went full-blown exciting whites on offense the way the Eagles did on defense? Now all of a sudden, Cooper Kupp can learn at bended knee. Or excuse me, you can have him learn from Cooper Kupp at bended knee in that offense. Ladd McConkey take the mantle from cold route running white boy from one to the other in the Los Angeles Chargers receiver room. Dad, it's the perfect storybook ending to this.
Yeah. I would say the teams that are looking for receivers the most that were playoff teams, contending teams. I say contending and playoff are two different, because Pittsburgh was never really contending, though they were a playoff team. Would be Pittsburgh and would be Washington and would be the Chargers as far as looking for immediate help at the wide receiver spot. Chargers, I think, definitely being at the top of the list.
Well, I think the Chargers need the most talent at that position because they've already, and Chargers fans have already kind of experienced the Greg Roman problem. Like, Greg Roman, really good up to a certain point. And, Dad, I'd be curious for your standpoint on this. I know you got to call at least one Chargers game that I was at last year, and I don't know if you had them on the road at all. But I remember specifically, and just seeing it in person, that Chargers game where the Bengals actually made a big comeback against them in the second half. Come out at the beginning, and Greg Roman and this offense are throwing so much at the Bengals on defense, who struggled mightily on that side of the ball. And in the second half, it really seemed to go stale, and that seemed to be a common refrain for them a lot last year. And last time on Dragon Ball Z, G-Ro gets run out of Baltimore because he never adequately developed the passing attack that's now flourishing for Lamar Jackson and company there. Like, you need to look at the cause and effect of that decision and wonder if that's what's in store for Justin Herbert, and then puts a premium on needing guys that can go out there and really get separation on their own, because I don't know how much the coordinator's going to do it for you there.
Yeah, be on your toes as far as getting a lead, and then go back on your heels and try and maybe protect that lead or not be as aggressive can certainly cost you. So we'll see what kind of a leash Greg Roman gets with the Chargers, because the expectation is they should be better, right? I think they surprised a lot. I think they and Washington were the two biggest surprises, and then Washington going as far as they did, but even the Chargers making the playoffs. So the expectation is to take another step, and that's in, obviously, the Chiefs division, where the Broncos are probably going to be better. Obviously, with Bo Nix, the Raiders, I have no idea about, but it's still a battle for the Chiefs at the top. They just ran away with that division. But the Chargers, the expectation is to definitely improve, a number of times to what you were last year, because you had to basically get rid of all your offensive talent.
Yeah, I think as we look at the tiers, like, obviously there's a team like Green Bay in the NFC that we mentioned needs a wide receiver to help put them over the top. They're good at that position already and well spread out. Yeah. But they need that one guy to put them over the top. When we talk about a team like the Los Angeles Chargers, we're devoid of talent at that area. And that was an offense that, again, wanted to do all this stuff along the line of scrimmage and be a big boy run team. And when you looked at actually the underlying stuff, wasn't actually that good of a running team. So you've got to add some dimension to that offense. Theirs feels a little bit more paramount. Buffalo, after what we saw last season, feels a little bit more paramount that they add to that room in a meaningful way, since Khalil Shakir and Mac Hollins and Keon Coleman all were good, not great in that spot. Maybe they're closer to Green Bay than anything else, but either way, it's an offseason that doesn't maybe have the crown jewel we thought it would, with T. Higgins and Tyreek Hill as two names at the end of the season that seemed like they were going to be a lot more readily available, versus now the list of names that we have here, more of the veteran guys, more north of 30 that are going to be in the market.
And you wonder about how the wide receiver group in the draft is going to go. Not as strong as last year, but certainly a couple of studs at the top. But as we just mentioned, there are a number of veteran wide receivers available that especially contending teams may grab onto.
Coming up next, the NBA gave us a little present to open early last night here. Who gets to take the last shot in Los Angeles? That's going to be a pressing question next. Well, Dad, we got there. I don't know if this is on time or early for the Los Angeles Lakers in the new iteration with Luka Doncic and LeBron James, but we're already going to be bombarded with the question today of who gets to take the shot in the clutch moments for the Lakers from here on out. They lose 100-97 as the back half of the NBA season kicks off to the Charlotte Hornets, who, quite honestly, a little bit awkward having to look across at the trade that almost was for the Los Angeles Lakers and Mark Williams, the center for the Charlotte Hornets, that could have been the guy overfilling the middle gap on their team. But the Lakers get down in the waning moments. They draw up a play where Luka ends up inbounding it to LeBron James, who misses a three in that big moment. It had the hot hand in the fourth quarter, been great. And they all kind of said, Dad, this can go both ways. At least Luka Doncic did, given the abilities and skill sets of these players. But you would imagine, especially in LeBron James's now waning years here, in the next few years, could be his last few years, either in the league or on the Los Angeles Lakers, more and more you would imagine that would defer to Luka Doncic, given the youth and the ability that he has as such a multifaceted part of his game, particularly from beyond the arc.
Yeah, listen. LeBron James in deferring, he has done that in the past to a fault, where people would jump on him for not taking the last shot. He's like, it's almost like he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. So, I mean, you look at the first, he took the 50 and 51st 3-pointers for the Lakers. The Lakers took 51 threes and made 15. I think that's 29% or some unbelievably low number, maybe even lower than that. 29.4%. He had a look. Now, if he'd have dished it to Luka had a 3-point look as well, probably a little more open than LeBron. Obviously, the offensive rebound, you just had to put up another three to try and tie it. But listen, this has followed LeBron for his entire career. Put your head down, take the last shot. Everybody else be damned. He looks for the person to have the best shot. So this is nothing new. Sometimes he's going to take the last shot, and sometimes Luka's going to take the last shot. I firmly believe that's going to happen throughout the maybe year or two they play together. That I don't think LeBron is going to always defer to Luka. Now, Luka may have the ball at times and may take the last shot because he has the ball, because he used to having the ball. So but I don't see this as being a problem, because this is something LeBron has done his entire career.
I do think it is interesting, though, to see the shoe on the other foot for LeBron James, who, when you look back at his career in totality, more often than not, he was the guy welcoming someone or being welcomed in and being deferred to. Going down to Miami, this was famously the conversation with him and Dwayne Wade, who had been friends forever, the Banana Boat crew. But Dwayne Wade, it was Wade County. It was a team that he had helped with Shaq Will to a championship. And now, in critical moments in certain spots, it was being deferential to LeBron James. Steph Curry went through this with Kevin Durant a little bit in Golden State. And now LeBron James, as the guy who's been here, whose team it's been, and also the elder statesman welcoming Luka Doncic in. You've seen the conscious effort from him coming in the first game for Luka, telling him to fit out, don't fit in, the inverse of the advice he famously gave Kevin Love at one point cryptically online. And so I just think it's interesting to watch LeBron age into this role.
Listen, for this team, though, watching what LaMelo Ball did in the fourth quarter of driving the lane, and there was no defensive presence, that's going to be the big issue for the Cavs, right? It's not going to be that LeBron and Luka are playing together. It's like they have no big man. I mean, now I don't know if Mark Williams would have solved it had the trade gone through. Mark Williams ended up, with 10 points in this game, 9 rebounds for Charlotte. But, I mean, they lost their defensive presence in the middle. So, I mean, that's I think, going to be the biggest issue following them of trying to attain what goal they're going to attain. You have scorers in LeBron and Luka, but you have no defensive presence. And LaMelo Ball absolutely took advantage of that in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think that was really the sign of the game that I'll take away from last night is all of our fears, and these were the Lakers' fears. Like, it was the reason they tried to trade for Mark Williams, and then it just didn't work out and didn't go through, and you can question them going after a player that was injured enough to prompt that kind of look into. But the bottom line is They knew that was an issue. We knew that was an issue. And surprise, surprise, first game back, I mean, being the only game, a standalone game coming back off the kind of break that we just had, the content barrenness, you're going to see this overblown and overreacted to all day long. But I don't know how much of an overreaction that is, Dad. The Lakers' inability to both have a presence offensively inside and certainly defensively stop people from getting the rack is going to be a huge loss. And it's why both teams, the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Lakers, probably going to be a little worse this year, even for the Lakers. This is a great long-term move having Luka there.
Yeah, I mean, again, this was for the long-term move, not for this year for the Lakers. They're fifth in the conference, and I don't see them moving up. They're only a game out of fourth of the Rockets, but do we see them moving up? Or if they move up, do we see them being a threat to Oklahoma City or to Memphis or to Denver or even to Houston? I don't. I don't see that. And certainly Dallas doesn't for as long as AD is going to be out with the oblique. He's already been out a week or so of a month going to be out. They're going to be too far behind, I think, as the season winds to an end. Their clock is moving a lot faster than the Lakers' clock, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, Dallas has a lot more to be worried about. That's the gamble that they made in this entire process. So, again, we knew this is going to be an issue, and can't act surprised that it is an issue now. They're still going to have more good days than bad, and I know the other day as we talked about the NBA's second half of the season a little bit, there is a belief that these guys can tread water holding the place they're at, but it's Oklahoma City seems so far out in front of everyone, it's almost hard to invent challenges in the West for that team here. Luka Doncic fits interestingly into a conversation that I saw, again, in the content wasteland we went through over the last couple of days that we went to here, including reviving this clip from Anthony Edwards, because I think coming off the Court of Gold documentary, and again, this time we've had to soul search and reflect coming off the All-Star weekend, the face of the NBA conversation made its way into the discourse here, and Anthony Edwards actually got asked about being that guy since so many people want to throw him up as the name, and he sort of pushed back on this. Take a listen.
Tell the truth.
Tell the truth.
Tell the truth. You can and will be that guy.
Well, I'm capable of being that guy, but I don't want to be that guy. Put it like that. I want to be the guy to just show up and hoop and just kill dudes and go home.
Dad, not a surprising response considering we remember going through the last couple of seasons. Who did Anthony Edwards say his favorite basketball player was growing up? Kevin Durant. There is no more I just want to hoop and go home and tweet player than Kevin Durant. So I can't act all that surprised by that. But I don't know where you stand on this, Dad, and I'm sure you've been having the face of the NBA debates a lot longer than I have. This doesn't seem like something you get to choose as much as it's something that other people decide for you.
Oh, without a doubt. Other people decide this for you. And it's a fair question. When Durant, LeBron, and Steph Curry leave the game, who's the face of the NBA? Because those three, obviously, through the Olympic team and still playing against one another now, the OGs, two of them over 30,000 points. I mean, they're still the names of the NBA, but they're on their last legs. So who is going to be the face? Because you're right. It's kind of chosen for you. You don't go out and bid for it and become it. You have to. It has to be kind of a natural occurrence. Who is going to be the face of the NBA once those three guys are gone? Because they hold the mantle until they're gone. Who is going to be the guy?
Wemby. I saw Bomani Jones say this yesterday, and he's 100% right. It's going to be Victor Wembanyama because he is, and Bo said this perfectly, he's excellent. He's a great player, which is the baseline for this already. It's why Anthony Edwards is in there. And Anthony Edwards, the reason we all want it is because we're drawn to him. He's got that natural charisma, even if he doesn't want this. Because really what he doesn't want is the responsibility to go ahead and speak on behalf of things going on in basketball. That's what LeBron and Steph and these guys that were the true face of the league, anytime something was going on, you felt like you could go to them and they were going to weigh in, influence, or impact that. And it doesn't sound like he wants to deal with that. But he can't help when he is around a microphone or around a camera to take the room over because he's just magnetic. That's why we all want him to be the face, because he's got that it factor charisma, that thing that so few of us have, quite honestly, that we all want when we see it and admire it in somebody else. Victor Wembanyama is not afraid to be the dude in front of the microphone. Like, since day one, he has come in with a level of professionalism and a level of maturity in those areas that I think far outpaces his years.
Yeah, and he's a unicorn as well, right? At 7'4", 7'5", he kind of has the look of the wow factor of the player as well. Because another one who's probably going to win the MVP this year is SGA, right, from Oklahoma City. Yeah. But he's another one who doesn't really look forward to or the microphone's not in front of his face a lot to be the face of the league. He's one of the best players, if not the best player in the league, without a doubt. But when you're talking about who do you think of when you think of the NBA, I agree. It's going to be Victor Wembanyama.
SGA, if he wins the MVP this year, becomes interesting to me because I think he's a guy that people are drawn to as the face of this Oklahoma City team who's kind of at the beginning of their run. He's got an opportunity, and I think there's growth potential there for him to be a guy. I know a lot of people are hung up on it being American. That's also why Anthony Edwards is getting a lot of this push because he's young, because he arrived on the playoff stage early, and because he's an American guy, and people still kind of latch on to that ideal. But I do think some of that kind of applies to the way we talk about Jason Tatum and why the reason I don't think that happens, despite the fact that, listen, you cannot be like the face of the NBA, whatever weird moniker we put this in, and still be a great, marketable, championship caliber player, which Jason Tatum is. He's on the cover of video games. People buy his jersey. He's in advertisements. He's in all these different things that absolutely show he is someone that people think of when they watch this league. But he's also not a guy that I feel like I know anything about personally. We all kind of had a laugh during the Celtics championship run that he seemed to just regurgitate and repurpose a bunch of quotes from other people because I don't know if he knew what to do in that moment. He does not have that same natural charisma that draws you to him in the same way. And we've got all these debates about, is he even the best guy on his own team in the critical moments that we saw in the postseason? So he can be one of the guys people think of, but unfortunately, there does have to be a certain level of magnetism that I just don't think he personally has. I said to someone the other day, Dad, he reminds me a lot of Kawhi Leonard in that they are undeniably great players that affect the game on both ends of the court. They're champions, but I don't feel like I know anything about them, and I feel like they enjoy that.
You know, and you wonder, does the face of the league have to be on a really good team? Because right now, again, we talk about the three OGs, LeBron and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. And the best placed team is the Lakers sitting at 5th. Golden State is sitting in the 10th slot, and Phoenix is in the 11th slot. So the three of them, LeBron's on the best team by standing. So I agree, Wemby is going to be the face of the NBA, but how much better does the team need to be? They're on the outside looking in right now. They're sitting in the 12th slot. They're certainly better than last year at 23 and 29, and you're going to get guys that are going to want to play in San Antonio. So how quickly can they build up? Because Oklahoma City is considered the best team in the NBA with a rising superstar in SGA. So if Wembanyama is going to be the face of the NBA, he's got to do it while his team is rising through the ranks.
Yep, and that's why the De'Aaron Fox trade feels so big for them about building towards that future where they are more competitive. Because I'm with you. You got to win. Like, that's ultimately a part of this is you have to, yes, be individually great to start this off, but it's got to be on a winner. And that's why Steph and LeBron and all these guys that were perennially at or near the top of the league held that title for so long, in addition to everything else with the shoes and the quotes and everything that comes with it. They felt ready for that moment here now. And again, Luka Doncic, a guy that's in this conversation as well on his best day. And all these guys, remember, like, I think we all learned a valuable lesson, or at least I hope we did, with the way that we talked about the Boston Celtics core, where for years, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were the guys we wanted to bust up because they didn't win soon enough for our likings. And then, surprise, surprise, they hit that prime age of NBA guys around 27, 28 years old, played their best basketball, and won a championship. And so with Luka and SGA and Anthony Edwards, the best is still yet to come.
Yeah, and with Luka now in L.A., you know, and what comes along with that and building around him, you're right. He may be the face of the NBA, though some may consider the out-of-shape face of the NBA, but still the face of the NBA.
The thighs and hips of the NBA. We'll be back with hour number 2 next on Gojo and Golic. Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. In the world of college basketball on the men's side, tough stretch for the Alabama Crimson Tide. They lose the 1-2 rivalry matchup to the Auburn Tigers and then get beat down by, come to think of it, another Tiger in number 15, Missouri. They lose 110-98 on Wednesday night. How about Missouri head coach Dennis Gates trying to go out there on behalf of the athletic department? Missouri had already been fined $250,000 after the Kansas game and would have faced a $500,000 fine if their fans had stormed the court. So what does Dennis Gates do, He goes and implores the student section to not storm the court, says, brothers and sisters in Christ, we need that money for NIL in the truest show of modern college basketball yet this season. Back in a second on Gojo and Golic. The commissioners agree the college football playoff seeding needs change. That might have been the most misleading headline I read yesterday. We'll tell you why in about 10 minutes here. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. in hour number 2 on Gojo and Golic. But, Dad, before we get to the guys currently in college, we got to talk about the guys that are making that transition here, because this upcoming NFL draft in the spring, the number 1 pick is a fascinating exercise where I have seen more and more people comfortable in recent weeks in mock drafts and the conversations around this talking about taking non-quarterbacks at number 1, something that we've seen before, but generally is not the way the NFL wants to operate considering how quarterback thirsty this league is. But with two-way stars like Travis Hunter or incredible pass rushers like Abdul Carter, there is reason. There is that generational label latched onto a couple of those guys that aren't quarterbacks that are giving a team like the Tennessee Titans something to think about in terms of drafting them or trading down and giving someone else the opportunity to. Louis Riddick, ESPN NFL front office insider and former NFL player and front office member himself, believes that there is a guy that should get taken number 1 overall playing quarterback, and his name is Cam Ward. Take a listen.
He directed that passing attack down there at Miami this year with the kind of precision and kind of maturity that is worthy of being considered a number 1 overall pick. It just is. And when he gets to the NFL level, he will be the guy who – what is the first thing that people said about Jaden Daniels when he went to Washington? They were surprised – well, not surprised, that everyone was impressed about the fact that he was there at 5 a.m. every day and he's the last guy to leave. And that's not just for show. It's because that's part of his process. It's the same thing with Cam Ward. And he will have that same kind of effect. He may not be warm and fuzzy to everybody because this dude is assassin serious about his craft. And I believe him when he says he's going to try and make everybody pay.
So, Dad, all right, Sweet Lou says that Cam Ward should be your number 1 overall pick. Do you agree?
Well, yeah. Well, yes, because the top teams do need quarterbacks. I could do without the every team is going to regret not taking me talk. I mean, that's just a bunch of, quite honestly, it's hot
That's
air.
what they have to say.
No, they don't have to say it. I mean, at the end of the day, you let your play do your talking. You don't have to do your talking. Maybe that's me being old school, but the guy's play has been great. Listen, the Miami defense was awful this year, and this dude had to keep bringing them back or outscoring the opponents, and they just ran out of gas in doing that. But, I mean, the dude was fantastic. He moves better. You look at the top quarterbacks, Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart. He moves better than Shedeur Sanders. He can escape the pocket better, throws on the run better. Shadeur's more of a pocket guy. But let your play do your talking. But that doesn't matter. I mean, what a guy says, he says. So
I think those are coached answers, Dad. We talk about that all the time, and how I always say going through the process when I was coming out. I remember I trained at Exos, and you've got people to help coach you through the interviews that are going to come up at the combine. And one of the things they asked was, hey, what are your plans if this doesn't work out? And I gave a real earnest answer. And they said, that's great. Now scrap that and tell them that you're going to work hard and try and come back next year. Like, there are certain things that people want to hear. And I think teams kind of want to hear from their quarterback that they've got a little bit of that edge to them. That seems to play well in checking the competitor box. And we just hear it so often. I wonder if that's a coached answer at this. Cam Ward does seem like, for whatever it's worth, a guy that reeks of this kind of confidence. Like, I don't know if you've seen the videos of him and Shedeur training together. He does seem to have that naturally. So maybe I'm overcomplicating things.
He does. But just what you said there is what do you believe in a guy anymore? But because you're right. There's a lot of coached answers out there. So I'm going to go on tape and I'm going to go on talking, and seeing what the player does actually on the field. Then listen to him say, you're going to regret if you don't take me. That, quite honestly means zero to me. Now, his play on the field means a lot to me. And Tennessee needs a quarterback. Cleveland needs a quarterback. The Giants need a quarterback. Those are the first 3 picks of the draft. And number 6, Las Vegas needs a quarterback. So it all comes down, I say this every year, it comes down to your grade on said quarterback. Is Tennessee's grade on Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart worthy of the number 1 pick of the draft? Or if not, do you try and sell like you're going to take a quarterback to have Cleveland or the Giants jump up to number 1 to say, no, we need a quarterback? No, preferably you would think it would be the Giants, to get the Giants to jump up 2 spots thinking Tennessee is going to take Cam Ward. And if the Giants want Cam Ward, that's the game that you play now, because you drop back 2 spots. You'll be able to get a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter at the 3 slot if the Giants jump up to take a quarterback. So that's what goes on in the offseason. You know this. Everybody knows this. It's the sell. It's the lies of what you're trying to have everybody think you're taking, because you control the draft at Tennessee. You control it with the first pick. You control the narrative of what the direction you want to go or the direction you want people to think you're going to go, and go from there. But the bottom line comes down to, what is their grade on Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, the 3 quarterbacks that are probably going to go in the first round? Is it number 1 pick worthy, or do you grab one of these generational players and we think what Travis Hunter would be and what Abdul Carter would be and wait on a quarterback?
So ESPN pulled a bunch of front office folks and personnel executives in the NFL, and one of them, I think, kind of hit the nail on the head, said that the top of the draft is generally good, not great. and a national scout said that Ward and Sanders would have both been ranked similar to Bo Nix, who went 12 overall in last year's NFL draft to the Broncos. That's kind of where I view these guys, Dad. Like, going back and watching them again, both very good players, both first-round players. Wouldn't take either of them number 1 overall. Like, I'd take Hunter or Abdul Carter. I would work on something there. I see plenty of good that goes along with it, and Cam Ward, you could argue, maybe has more physical upside in some of the tools, certainly a prolific college career. And I appreciate watching this dude flair for the dramatic. Like, a lot of the stuff we talked about with Caleb Williams is going to be the same conversation with Cam Ward. It's what worries me a little bit. Like, quite honestly, in the current NFL, where we see, hey, we've been banking on talent for a while now, you know, going all the way back to what we did with the San Francisco 49ers trading up years ago for Trey Lance, what we saw last year and a couple of years ago with Anthony Richardson coming out with Indianapolis. Betting on upside is always fun, and I don't knock teams for that. But, man, I wonder if at some point the pendulum's going to swing back the other way and say we kind of need guys that can come in and give us a little more early on. And if you're going to bank on earlier success, I'd probably go, knowing nothing about what they are behind closed doors and only on what they've seen, Shedeur comes in more ready. He's a little bit cleaner in terms of the eval, even if the skill set to me is a diminished Joe Burrow. Like, I think he does a lot of things similarly, but nothing as well. But overall, it feels cleaner and certainly had a lot less to work with, at least in the group protecting him, than a guy like Cam Ward did in Miami this last year.
The worry with me with Shedeur is he's not as mobile as Cam Ward, and Shedeur is going to go to
I disagree.
I don't think he's as mobile as Cam Ward. And he's going to go to a bad team. If he does go to the Raiders, that's a bad offensive line. I mean, it's going to be like Caleb Williams.
No one's got better experience in this draft dealing with a bad offensive line than Shedeur Sanders. Full stop.
Well, no, I agree. And look at the amount of times he was sacked, and running around. And some of the sacks obviously were on the O-line, and a decent amount of the sacks were on him as well. And that's just going to speed up in the NFL. Do I think he could develop into a good quarterback? Yeah, I do. I mean, I definitely think he's more ready. I agree with you there. He has definitely had the experience of moving around because he's had to. But I see a rough start for both these guys. I don't see either one coming in with the poise of a Jaden Daniels. It would have to be along the lines of kind of the Bo Nix way, where you start out rough and then show improvement. Now, Bo Nix has a quarterback guru coach in Sean Payton, without question, and that certainly helps. These two quarterbacks will not have that with where they're going to go, but that's the route you want to see a young quarterback go. Start out rough, that's the expected norm, but then show improvement through the year.
I mean, where we expect them to go, and that's the difficult part of this. Like, if one of these guys fell to the Raiders at 6, that would feel like value to me. And landing in that spot feels like, hey, you're at least going to be given the fact that it's Pete Carroll now. That changes the way I view that organization and being a hospitable landing spot. Because to your point, Dad, what these guys are going to be is dependent, the way most quarterbacks are. There are like 4 or 5 guys in the NFL that exist on this earth that can go out there agnostic of their situation and have success. It might not be the same level of success that we've seen for these guys at the better spots, but they would have success because they're that good. That's not these two guys. If they land in the wrong spot, things are going to go poorly for them for all the reasons that we've talked about here. And so Bo Nix is a good reminder that where you land matters. Bo Nix probably does not have that season everywhere he went last year. Hell, if you swapped him in Washington, that ended up being a good situation. I don't know if it goes that well. The difference is, though, for both Bo Nix and for Jaden Daniels that gave them the edge here, they are far bigger threats, especially Jaden. Jaden's off in his own category, but Bo Nix ended up being one of the most productive scramblers in the NFL last season. I don't think either of these guys are that. Like, when we see them run, I don't think either of them are the guy that we saw in Bo Nix or in Jaden Daniels here. Like, I think I think Shedeur Sanders is mobile, not a dual threat, and I think the same is true for Cam Ward. Like, I think when we see them run, if he runs, I don't know what their participation at the combine is going to be. I don't think that would be all that impressive. You turn on the tape and you don't see a dynamic athlete in the backfield for Cam Ward. You see a guy that can Houdini his way out, kind of like we saw last year from the number 1 overall pick, but I don't think dynamic is the word that comes to mind for me by any stretch.
No, I completely agree. Completely agree. And you look at this draft, 4 of the first 6 picks need quarterbacks, right? Tennessee needs a quarterback. Cleveland needs a quarterback. Giants need a quarterback. And then Las Vegas needs a quarterback. New England and Jacksonville don't need quarterbacks. So 4 of the 6 need quarterbacks. There's basically 2 that everybody are talking about that'll go up there. And then where will Jackson Dart fit? Because we know we always overvalue the quarterback position. So it will be interesting on who takes Cam, who takes Shedeur. Are they day one starters? Just say, let's just start the learning curve right now. Or, people always talk about, Tennessee or Cleveland, maybe they'll trade out. It's a lot easier to say you'll trade down. You got to find a partner that is willing to trade up and give up assets and give up a lot of assets to move up to that 1 or 2 spot. So it's way easier said than done to say you want to trade down because you got to find a partner to trade up.
Well, really, if we're talking about trade partners, it's the Jets or the Raiders, right? That's probably who we're talking about, who are in meaningful shouting distance of that. Like, I'd say the Saints guys, just, work on yourselves right now. You don't need to bring anyone else into the equation.
Yeah.
You've been in a lot of relationships here. Let's go to therapy for a little while and let's work on ourselves. But for Las Vegas and for the Jets, those are the teams that maybe if it gets down to the Giants range, like, I don't know if number 1 is going to be in their budget right now. And I don't think that would be wise, again, given the quarterbacks that we're talking about. But if all of a sudden you're down at 3 and those guys are available, I think New York is probably going to take the quarterback. But I think that's the spot where maybe you could get those guys to call. Quite honestly, I don't know if Cleveland's going to be able to pass this up just because they've mangled that position so much beyond repair. At least for Tennessee, I could talk myself into bringing a veteran over, taking the best possible player at top, and building this thing with a long-term view more in mind.
What I don't know is I don't know next year's quarterback class coming out of college. Because the expectation, quite honestly, for Tennessee, for Cleveland, for the Giants, is not a great year, right? It's I don't know if they'll be in the same position of 1, 2, and 3, but the expectation is they're not going to be much better. And I honestly do not know. I take it year by year with the draft and the quarterbacks of what the quarterback situation is next year. Though this year, you definitely have more veteran quarterbacks available than you have in the past. Name quarterbacks. Now, some dealing with age, some dealing with injury, and some dealing with just flat out haven't played that well. But there are a 5 to 6 quarterbacks out there, legitimate veterans who you could have as kind of a bridge until your next quarterback.
I mean, listen, Arch Manning is going to be 3 years removed from high school, so he could be draft eligible if he has a great season next year. Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, I'll say you right now, he's not perfect. He puts the ball in harm's way a little bit. There's some stuff there as I'm going back and watching Will Campbell, the standout LSU offensive tackle, Drew Aller from Penn State. So it is an uncertain class beyond this group now, and it's a group that invites a lot of questions already in the 2025 NFL draft. So lots to worry about there. Coming up next, though, as they say in hockey, let's do that hockey, a Four Nations Championship preview next. All right, as the Four Nations face-off has taken North America and really, I mean, the entire hockey world, the entire sporting world by storm here, only right to bring in our buddy and the co-host of Missing Curfew, Shane O'Brien, former NHL defenseman, to kind of talk about, Obi, just where we're sitting right now with hockey, walking into this matchup, this final round between Team USA and Team Canada in the Four Nations face-off. We've heard all about TV ratings, ticket prices jumping up for this. Like, you tell me, this is the most anticipated hockey game we've seen since when? Are we talking like the last Stanley Cup final here? How deep does this go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes even deeper than a Stanley Cup final, which is crazy because if you ask any guy that's played in the NHL what their ultimate goal is, it's obviously to win a Stanley Cup. And if you even ask the guy, would you rather have an Olympic gold medal to a Stanley Cup, every guy's going to say a Stanley Cup. But for whatever reason, well, actually, I know the reason. We haven't had best on best for 9 years because of COVID and the way things were in Canada and some other stuff that's going on. So I was excited about the game in Montreal more than anyone. All year on Missing Curfew, I was building it up. I did not expect that. I mean, you know, I've got to know Maddie and Brady Tkachuk very well. They're great to Missing Curfew. Big Walt, their dad was on last week. I knew those boys were fired up to play. But what they did for USA hockey in general, and same as the boys on the other side, Hagel, Bennett, and Branko. I mean, listen, it's all we're talking about. I turn on ESPN the other morning, and they're talking about fighting on ESPN. I'm like, wow, okay, that's the first time I've seen that maybe ever. So not that hockey's only about fighting, boys, but the passion, representing your country. It went from, when they first started the Four Nations, the final in Boston, there was tons of tickets, to now nobody can get tickets because that's all everyone can talk about. So I commend the players. I commend the NHL and the NHLPA for putting this on, but the players, man, they deserve all the credit.
Yeah, you don't want it to revolve around the fighting, but 3 fights in 9 seconds certainly raises the casual fan's eyebrow, no doubt about it. So for you in the hockey world, how big did this become? Was the expectation for this to be this big?
We were hoping so because, it's been so long that we've had best on best. And listen, the NHL is great right now. I mean, it's as fast as it's ever been. I wish it was a little more physical at times, and the Four Nations has brought the physicality back into hockey, and that's what this best on best and short tournaments do. But we wanted to get some more eyeballs on the game, and listen, fighting at the right time in hockey is the best thing ever. Like back in the day, the stage fighting and all that I didn't love, but when you have passion and pride behind it, and you're able to fight, that's when fighting in hockey is the greatest thing in the world. So, like I said, again, it's the players. As an ex-player and a guy that's in media, I was hoping this tournament would get some eyeballs on it. And as you boys know, it's exceeded expectations. And once again, I just got to commend the players.
No, there's no doubt about it. They have brought that passion at a time where, listen, we're talking about these mid-season exhibitions. The NBA is getting taken to task because their all-star game has largely been devoid of that same passion. And right now, the NHL's really capitalized on that. And so let's take it where it is, because I think this is interesting. So many people, when it comes to all-star games, the fear is injury, especially from the team side, that you get guys banged up. And that's been kind of the story, especially for Team USA, coming off that last game against Canada, being a little bit banged up here, the Tkachuk boys and everything. So based on what you've heard about the health of Team USA, how different do you expect this game to go based on availability?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Maddie and Brady Tkachuk are going to be playing in that game. Unless they physically cannot put their equipment on or they physically cannot skate, those two, what their dad called them, lunatics. That's the ultimate compliment in hockey. If someone, especially your dad, calls you a lunatic. Listen, they're great kids, man. They are so good for USA hockey. The way they treat people off the ice and the way they compete on the ice. So they're going to be there. Listen, Austin Matthews has been playing hurt all year. I got to commend him as well. It could have been easy for him to just say, hey, listen, I'm going to take the break. He's been dealing with an upper body injury all year. He's come out and played. I imagine he'll play as well. McAvoy in the back end's a big loss. We're not sure if Quinn Hughes is going to be able to play. But to answer your question, I expect everyone for Team USA besides McAvoy to be in the lineup.
How do you expect this game to go? Again, taking out the 3 fights early on in the first game and just from the hockey side of it, how much do you compare this finals game to that game earlier in the week?
Yeah, it's going to be completely. I don't expect any fights really. It's just this is definitely a Game 7 mentality. Every game in the tournament has had that feel, but this one is obviously the championship game, and you need the Tkachuks on the ice, you need Bennett on the ice, you need Hagel on the ice. So I don't expect that. I expect fast, tight checking, hard hitting hockey. You guys have the advantage in that. Hellebuck is unbelievable. He's the best scorer in the league right now. Binnington's a gamer. He hasn't been at his best, but he's found a way to hang in there. But like I said to the boys on Missing Curfew, can USA beat us twice? I don't know if they can. If they can beat us twice, they deserve to have the Four Nations Cup over their head. But I cannot wait, boys. It's going to be an unbelievable game. And this tournament's it's been so good for hockey, and it's been awesome.
Being born in Canada, how much did that loss hurt?
It stung. So I listen. I was excited. I live in the States, obviously, as you boys know. I love the United States of America. When it comes to hockey and we represent best on best, the Canadian boy comes out in me. So the Bell Center was absolutely rocking. The two anthems were awesome. And I don't like how Canadians have been booing the American national anthem. I think that's a Bush League move by the Canadian people up there. And besides that, it was an unbelievable atmosphere. The place was jumping. But when we lost 3-1, it did sting, but it didn't ruin my night, boys. I still went out and had a good time.
I was going to say, I saw some of the videos coming out from you and the rest of the boys, and it seemed like you guys still managed to go out there and enjoy what's been an awesome celebration of the sport. As far as the tournament overall, obviously there's been two other teams in this besides the U.S. and Canada. I mean, does it go to Hellebuck if you're giving out an MVP to the tournament already here? Like, who's been the best player on the ice so far through the games we've had?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to say Jack Eichel. Ike's the kid that I got to know very well. Another good friend of Missing Curfew. Everything Ike's went through with his neck in Buffalo and all that stuff and coming back and winning the Stanley Cup in Vegas. It's the healthiest he's been all year. I think he's been the best 200-foot player in the tournament. Obviously, McDavid and McKinnon and Crosby from a Canadian perspective, too. Those guys have been great. But if you had to ask me right now, if USA gets it done Thursday night, who the MVP to me is, it's Jack Eichel. His game is just so complete. He's so big. He's so strong. Every time I'm watching a game, he has the puck on his stick. So to me, Jack Eichel's the best player. If they win, if they don't win, you got to give it to 87 Sidney Crosby for Canada.
So outside of the Olympics, where NHL players are going to be able to play in the Olympics, when they have years like this, is there a way to expand this to more nations?
Yeah. That's another great question. We're gonna have a World Cup in 2028. So that will be obviously way more teams. And Russia's a mega powerhouse in hockey, and we all know what's going on over there. We all want that war to end sooner than later, and hopefully it does. But that's put a little kink in everything as well. But yes, the NHL, the NHLPA has moving forward. Olympics next year, 2028 World Cup, where we got guys like Draisaitl from Germany, who's arguably the top 3 player in the world. Pastrnak from the Czech. Ovechkin obviously doing what he's doing, chasing down the great one. Like we definitely need more countries in there, and the NHL and the PA boys are going to find a way to get that done.
Zooming out a little bit, beyond Four Nations, you just mentioned it, what Ovechkin's on the cusp of doing. Did you ever think you'd see that in your lifetime watching hockey, someone actually get close to and look like they have a chance to pass this record?
No, I mean, when you're a young kid growing up, and I've got to know Gretz a little bit. He's a better guy than he was a player, which is saying a lot because he's the greatest player to ever play. But when you look at his numbers, you're just like, wow, this guy he is the great one. And to see that Ovi is, I believe, 16 goals away from him. When I first played against Ovi my rookie year, I got traded from Anaheim to Tampa. And Tampa and Washington were in the old Southeast Division. And my first game against Ovechkin, I was like, I got no business being on the ice against this guy. He was big. He was strong. He could hit. He can shoot from anywhere. I love Ovi. I think it's great for the game. I do think he's going to pass Gretzky, which is an unbelievable task. But no, I never imagined anyone being in this position.
And as far as the overall look in the NHL now, the best player in the game, Connor McDavid, is he ready to raise the cup at some point?
Listen, I picked Edmonton at the start of the year. Before this break going in, McDavid and Draisaitl were playing at a level that not even Nate McKinnon was playing at, in my opinion. And Nate is, he's leading the league in scoring right now. But those two guys together, they're just at another level. And if they can stay healthy, it's a big trade deadline for Stan Bowman. They need to add at least one defenseman and maybe 2, but at least one. And if they can stay healthy and get the goaltending, he deserves it. It's his time. And they were playing at a level that I had never seen before.
Yeah, right now on DraftKings Sportsbook, Edmonton, the odds-on favorite, plus 600 to win it all this season. So certainly money well spent by you the way it's going right now. All right, do we have a score prediction for the game coming up in this final between the U.S. and Canada? Have you put it on wax yet?
No, that's a good question. I'm going to say 3-1. Reverse the roles. I'm going to say 3-1 Canada on an empty netter. We're going to find a way to get it done, but it's going to be great for hockey in a great building, the TD Garden. I love playing in Boston. There'll be no shortage of beers being drank in that building. It'll be rocking. So it was always one of my favorite buildings to play in. So I can't wait to see the atmosphere.
Listen, it's going to live up. The ticket prices are up. It's at the TD Garden. Beers are going to be consumed. I mean, it's going to be a magical night.
Yeah, I can't wait. And switching gears now, I got you boys. Notre Dame, what a run! I took them at the start of the playoffs. I felt good going in after the first drive when the quarterback went down there and he was so tired. I was like, I don't know, but what a run for the Irish. I was thinking about you boys, but I think they will be back.
No, I appreciate you saying that. It was, like you said, kind of like this where you're just so proud of the effort from everyone there. Hard to really say a sour word about the season. These guys gutted it out. Injuries left and right for this team, including during that postseason run. And there was a lot to be proud of for that group. And I'm with you. I think they got a strong squad coming back next year. So it's a little too early to get excited about that just yet. But, man, what a fun season. And one I'm glad that you got to enjoy along with us during that playoff run here. So we'll try and pay it off for you next time here. But in the meantime, Obi, appreciate the time, man. Enjoy the hell out of this one. I know the whole hockey world had a great time celebrating this. Everyone check out Missing Curfew. No one is going to break it all down and tell the story of this better than you guys. So appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, boys. Appreciate it. Fan of you guys. Love what you do and always love coming on and talking some hockey with you boys. So anytime. Thank you.
Well, Dad, you heard the Jack Hughes will he, won't he situation referenced a little bit there. And the answer is won't he, because while all of this mystery around him coming over, or excuse me, not Jack Hughes, that's his brother on the team,
Quinn.
but Quinn Hughes. The will he, won't he is won't here. The Canucks decided, the team that he actually plays for, which I was wondering when that was going to rear its head in here. Again, we talked about all the injury with these guys in a tournament that's just sort of been drawn up out of the dirt here. The Canucks stepped in and said, yeah, we're not medically clearing you to go do any of this because we have hockey that we want you to help us play when we get back to the actual season here. So would have been fun, but now unfortunately that one's going to die in the vine.
Yeah, he was just cleared for contact yesterday from Vancouver, and then they thought if he traveled from Vancouver to Boston, and then they have a game Saturday in Las Vegas. But the rules also, as Quinn Hughes said, the rules are the rules. I can't play unless anyone else get injured. The tournament rules state that if a team loses 2 players at forward or on defense to an injury or illness, it can bring in a non-roster player. And U.S. lost Charlie McAvoy, lost 1, so they didn't lose 2. So Quinn Hughes said those are the rules. You know, we can't circumvent the rules, even though he just got cleared. It doesn't sound like Vancouver was going to let him play anyway. So that's that. They'll be without McAvoy. They'll be without Quinn Hughes. They'll have to go with others there, but the Tkachuk brothers are ready to go. And the little Matthew Tkachuk and one of the Canadian players, a little bit of back and forth going, which isn't shocking for a little bit of smack talk. But, man, I'm looking forward to this. And I know everybody says for the U.S. to win 2 straight against Canada is going to be a monumental task. But, wow, what a buildup for this game. This has been such a success that the word exhibition doesn't even cross anybody's lips anymore, right? I mean, you do not even think of this as an exhibition because these boys are going to go all out playing for the country on their sweater. I mean, I am so looking. Talk about get your popcorn ready.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. It's a reminder, and this is true. I always say this when it comes to the content you listen to or watch, and certainly sports falls into that category. People are drawn to passion no matter what you wrap it in. Doesn't matter the sport, doesn't matter everything else. When you can tell without a shadow of a doubt that the people going out there and doing it care, man, it makes it easier for you to buy in. Hockey inherently exciting anyway, especially when there's stakes attached. But kind of like we talked about in the NBA with the in-season tournament, you manufactured stakes out of nowhere by wrapping it in the flag, and it's culminated in one of the most impactful hockey events that we can remember in the last decade or so here. By the way, TD Garden, when they sing "Oh Canada," don't boo their anthem back. We don't need to do this whole back and forth, man. Go out there. "Oh Canada," kind of a banger too. Pretty song. So let it play. Go out there and let the boys take care of it and enjoy some hockey coming up here tonight in Boston. Coming up next, we'll talk about the future of college football being decided by 2 men on Gojo and Golic. Welcome back to Gojo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. Thanks to Shane O'Brien for helping us look ahead to the Four Nations final tonight. That thing is going to be an absolute blast. The polar opposite of that is the shifting tectonic plates on the business side of college athletics. But man alive, we got here faster than ever this offseason. As Wednesday, a joint meeting between the SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey and Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti led to an agreement amongst the two that the seeding of the college football playoff should change this fall. Now, that's not surprising considering most everyone, that was the criticism coming off the first round of this, where you saw Boise State and Arizona State wind up as the top seed, two of the top four seeds with the byes in the tournament, all of the top seeds ultimately losing, all these different things that prompted some soul searching early on. And people looking at this. The difference now, Dad, is this still requires a unanimous vote from everybody else involved here. In 2026, when the new part of the TV deal kicks in, then Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti truly have their run of the place. They have been handed the power starting then to make all the decisions for the CFP, and everyone else can kind of be consulted. They can ask their opinion nicely, but they don't ultimately have to consider it. Right now, you got to get the ACC, the Group of Five, and the Big 12, and Notre Dame Athletic Director Pete Vacqua to all vote yes to this. And, Dad, I don't see any world if I'm the ACC or the Big 12 where I sign up for reseeding that is almost surely going to impact those team conferences for the better and the ACC and the Big 12 for the worse.
There is no way, again, unanimously agreed upon by the 10 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame Athletic Director Pete Vacqua. There is no way they're going to get a unanimous choice. When you had a Group of Five, Boise State won the Mountain West Conference. They were 9th ranked but got a bye. And Arizona State was 12th ranked, won the Big 12, and got a bye. Why would their conference commissioners, why would they vote for this? Especially when it's only for a year. They know in 26 it's going to change because that's when the Big Ten and the SEC have all the power, as you mentioned, and we're going to get to 4 automatic bids for SEC and for the Big Ten, and that can be a whole nother discussion. But there's no way. I don't see how the other commissioners are going to get talked into unanimously voting for this. And basically, I wouldn't say screwing their teams because it was wrong. That does need to be changed. There's no doubt it needs to be changed. But why would a commissioner change it especially for 1 year? They're going to let this thing ride and hope that a Group of Five gets a bye again, or ACC or Big 12 gets a bye again, and that they can have that at least in their hip pocket before it all changes in 26.
We saw there's massive dollar amounts associated with all this, and the Big Ten and the SEC already tilted the table so much in their favor in terms of how much of the CFP bonuses they recoup. So, yeah, there's no way those other teams are giving this up. And I hear the people that say, Dad, is this being too overreactionary to 1 year of the CFP's 10-team expanded playoff? Now, granted, we're only probably going to get one more year of it being this expanded playoff of 12 teams, But I looked at the result, and I still come back to, because there are people that say, I saw Chris Vanini at The Athletic point out this would devalue conference championship games even more if all of a sudden you go to natural seeding, since you had so many of the top seeds playing in the two big conference championship games in the SEC and the Big Ten. But the thing that just gets stuck in my craw is Oregon was supposed to be the number one team in the sport going into this tournament. And you're supposed to be rewarded as the number one team. And they got a bye and then got to play the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee in the second round. And in what world does that feel like a reward for going out there and playing great all season long and ascending to the 1 seed if that's what you're ultimately going to get in the tournament?
Oh, listen, I completely agree. It needs to be changed. But for a 1 year deal, it's not going to. I would be stunned, right? This would be one of the greatest upsets of all time if it was voted unanimously that they just went by the ranking. So I don't see this happening. I think it's a non-starter. Even Greg Sankey admits that it has to be unanimous. So I think they're just kind of putting it by the wayside before you go to what would be a 14-team playoff, which would have 4 SEC, 4 Big Ten, that's 8, 2 ACC and 2 Big 12, that's 12, and then 1 Group of 5 winner, and Notre Dame if they're 14 or better. That's your 14 teams. Those are your 14 teams. And I don't know how much I agree with automatically having 4 from the SEC and the Big Ten, because you go down and look at the 4th place finishers, and sometimes the records were bad, sometimes they were good. I just don't think there should be a number of automatics. And I know that's spitting into the wind, because there's going to be. But I just think there should be you're ranked 14 by your committee if you buy into the committee rankings, and go from there.
I was on the Nate Brown show yesterday and got asked if the SEC and the Big Ten deserve 4 teams apiece. And we pointed out the other day, you go back and look historically at the last decade, and the data would tell you that the SEC and the Big Ten have generally put over, on average, 4 teams into the final 14 in the polls at the end of the season most years. And so these numbers and the amount of automatic qualifiers are kind of in line with what we've seen. But deserve is always a loaded word that doesn't make any sense. Dad, this is the SEC and the Big Ten feeling their mortality, in my opinion. Because if you were those conferences and you weren't worried about your standing and you thought, hey, we're going to put 4 or 5 of these teams in every year and it's not going to be a big deal, you wouldn't need to do this. But last year you tasted your own blood in a way that didn't feel good. This is a response that comes out of fear that you're going to lose out on the money you think is your birthright at this point just by being bigger and better for a long time here, and not necessarily what you're going to be going forward. They got worried after last year, and so they want to ensure that'll never happen again, because their standing on top of the sport got questioned for the first time in a long time. And while it was a bit cannibalized, because now we're talking about the Big Ten maybe as the have over the SEC after the last couple of seasons here, it still ultimately comes back to the same place where these two feel like, because they have been carrying the bulk of the load when it comes to the meaningful money games and champions for a long time, that they want to protect that because they're feeling fear for the first time.
Yeah, they are. But if you look at the rankings, if you would go by the rankings of last year, it was basically 4 teams from the Big Ten. It was Ohio State, it was Oregon, it was Penn State, and it was Indiana. There were 4 teams in the SEC. It was Texas, it was Georgia, it was Tennessee, and it was Ole Miss. They were sitting at number 11. There were 2 teams in the ACC. It was Clemson and it was SMU. 2 teams in the Big 12, Arizona State and BYU, and the group of 5, Boise State and Notre Dame. So it actually worked out 4-4, 2-2, 1-1. Again, to put an actual number on it, to say there has to be 4, because, it changes year to year. And I think you need to flow with that change and not guarantee 4 slots for the Big Ten and for the SEC. Quite honestly, sometimes it could be more and sometimes it could be less. But I think it should flow a little easier than putting actual numbers to it.
Yeah, I felt like the regular season truthers that wanted to protect that so much would really frown upon this, but that seems to be nowhere to be found at this point in time here. And I want to be clear, while I think natural seeding is the way to go, I still think the conference champion should get an automatic berth into this. Like, I think the highest ranked group of 5, I think that stuff's important. I think maintaining some of the regionality and including more people in this process is an important part of what we're doing here with all this. Again, how you jumble the bag there needs some work, but I don't think that should go by the wayside. And that's my biggest fear, Dad, is along with these is going to eventually come, hey, why are we going to invite the group of 5 to have another spot that we could just put one of our big boys in and keep making more money?
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen, and we know that's what it banks on. It banks on money. That's why Notre Dame gets ripped all the time because, why aren't you in a conference? Well, because they get to keep their, $20 or $30 million, and anybody that was in that position would do the exact same thing. But the more teams, obviously, you have in the playoffs, the more money you're going to make for your conference.
Yeah, by the way, someone who will absolutely be voting yes when it comes to natural seeding and that change in college football would and should be Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bavacqua, that would allow them the chance to potentially get one of those buys and improve their station. And all of this, I'm sure, would anger everybody else. But you know what? Go figure. We're used to that.
That's exactly right. No big deal.
All right, coming up next, we finish off as we always do. This, that, and the third here on Gojo and Golic. All right, let's finish it off the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you to the rest of the day. Download, subscribe, rate, and review our show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe and hit the bell on the YouTube channel. Gojo and Golic is where you find us. All our great episodes, including our great guests. Thanks to Shane O'Brien for missing curfew, previewing the Four Nations NHL Final with us. If you missed that, check it out wherever you get your pods or right here on YouTube as soon as we're done with the show. God, this I should say, should have been a story we did with Jason Fitz, a purveyor of mannequins everywhere, as someone who famously would hold Halloween parties where he'd stage mannequins in the form of various horror movies on his front lawn because he's a sicko. Jason Fitz had a room in his house that was just full of mannequins all year round. Terrifying stuff here. A.J. Brown now adds that distinction to his house. As A.J. Brown's girlfriend, I believe, posted on TikTok a video. Your boyfriend buys a 6'2" mannequin to put his game-worn Super Bowl uniform on, and Dad, it's just that. In what looks like a workout room in A.J. Brown's house, there's an A.J. Brown-sized mannequin wearing all his gear from the Super Bowl win over the Eagles. Where are you at on this as a way to commemorate the Super Bowl that they just won?
That's pretty cool. Didn't wash it either. You can see the pants still has the dirt on it, from dirt and possibly some blood on it. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's pretty. Normally you would take the jersey and you would frame it in a glass frame and hang it on the wall. This is kind of cool. From helmet to jersey to pants. I don't know if it starts to smell, if you got to spray some Febreze on it every now and then because it hasn't been washed. I don't know. But I think that's a pretty cool way to display it. I kind of like it.
I find mannequins a bit tacky. Like, it seems lesser than the accomplishment it is celebrating, if that makes sense. It's a good mannequin, and hell, if you're A.J. Brown, you are one of the few people physically that actually resembles a mannequin physique. Because mannequins are jacked, right? You see especially, I feel like the Under Armour ones. You go into Notre Dame's bookstore, and the mannequins they got in that store look like they should be working security. So kudos to A.J. Brown for having a body that is actually mannequin-esque, but it just feels kind of like a sideshow more than a celebration of something as cool as the Super Bowl.
Yeah, because it's different. You don't see this often. Again, you usually see it framed in a frame, in a glass frame, and hung on a wall. That's the normal way to display a uniform or really a jersey. But this is a way to display everything from the cleats all the way up to the helmet.
I will say and we're used to I think what the problem for me is the backdrop, because we're also used to these things, in addition to what you just described, being framed, as also being in an office. It's surrounded by books and mahogany and other awards, and it's got all that context. This is just a mannequin sitting in a workout room. Like, it looked like it was next to a Pilates reformer. And so now all that's going to happen, Dad, I can tell you, is every time someone goes in that room, they're going to flip on the lights and briefly lose their breath because they're going to think someone's in the room waiting for them there. That's what's going to happen.
That's true. I mean, that does happen with mannequins. Mannequins are scary. I am not a fan of mannequins. I am a fan of the Under Armour mannequins, like you say, because of the way everybody thinks it's going to look like on them, like it looks on a mannequin, but it's not, except for, a guy like A.J. Brown. But you're right. At the end of the day, it feels like it's an intruder in your house.
Yeah, so arm yourself with knowledge, and don't worry, it's just a mannequin shaped like A.J. Brown. Let's go to that. I always love to humble people that are better at most things than I'll ever be, and Shohei Ohtani is one of those people, and while he can do a million things on the baseball field, he's a two-way star, he's a basically billion-dollar man, apparently he can't parallel park. Let's take a look at this. All right, decent effort so far.
Got a lot of room.
Oh, he's doing it out. He's got a ton of room. These guys are in the way of the camera, too. It's not really helping the cause right here. Oh, yeah, no, he's struggling now. He's in the adjustment phase and is not really sure where he's at. He's out of his depth.
I didn't think he needed to adjust.
No, I didn't either. I thought he was perfectly fine in the spot here. This is actually a better effort, but in better circumstances. It looked like he was trying to operate around cones, although he is in front, Dad, and with people watching you and with eyes on you, parallel parking is one of the most high-risk, high-reward scenarios that you can concoct.
There is no cars around him. This is not a real parallel parking test, right? I mean, there's nothing in front of him or behind him. He's just trying to park into a spot, and maybe he's just trying to learn it. I don't know. But without question, one of the more daunting tasks when there is traffic going by you, when you pull up ahead and you put your blinker on that says you're going to parallel park, and you now have a car. If there's no room for a car to go around you, you have a car waiting behind you for you to parallel park and get the hell out of the way before they go. Now you have that pressure on you. You have the pressure of maybe people standing on the sidewalk and watching, because we all do, right? We all do. If you're on the sidewalk and you're watching and all of a sudden somebody stops, you stop and you say, okay, let's see your skills. Let's see your parallel parking skills. And man, all I know is your brother and my son Jake is great at it. Jake is great at backing into spots, parallel parking, never a worry with him. Man, but it all depends on the size of the space that you have. Because if you go too deep, too shallow, whatever, the first time, and if you have to adjust, man, that turns out to be an embarrassment. So much so that if you have to keep adjusting, you just pull out and move on and just disappear.
Yeah, in general, parallel parking, I'm pretty locked in on, especially the car I drive now fits easily into most spots there. And once you learn the formula, it's a pretty easy way to go about it, I think. But to your point, that is 100% the math you've got to do if you're in front of an establishment, is you get one adjustment, really. One, maybe two adjustments on the way in to try and pull back forward, get yourself right. And then if it goes beyond that and you're stuck out into the road, you have to jet off and park so far away that no one at the restaurant will recognize you when you walk back over, because you don't want that smoke and you don't want that shame. It is stadium pulse to the max in that moment, and it truly separates the wheat from the chaff.
And when you do it well, you normally will get an applause by people standing there and strangers. Just like,
you've gotten applause?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You get
I don't believe you.
Just a light golf clap, like, okay, good job, well done. Because you know when you're on the sidewalk watching, you're wanting them to fail. You know? You're wanting them to fail. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you're wanting to see the show.
You're sick.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. You're wanting to see the failure of it, especially if there's a car waiting to see how they're going to react to the situation.
Well, speaking of failures, let's move on to the third here. Thankfully, these failures are probably going to jail. The FBI, according to the FBI, the burglars who recently targeted famous rich athletes like Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Joe Burrow, the string of thefts bouncing from city to city, rented fake IDs, used fake cars, ditched the cars as needed, had burner phones, and would hide in the woods while monitoring patterns of security guards in order to break into these homes. They had stolen an estimated $3 million of goods from some of these athletes. The 7 Chilean burglars who had targeted these stars actually may have gotten caught by taking these selfies with all of their loot when they were together, according to a 20-page affidavit included in the federal criminal complaint against them on Tuesday. These guys face up to 10 years in jail, Dad. After all of that planning to go and steal all of these jewels, bags, and everything else for money, they may have gotten caught in part because they couldn't resist the urge to flick one up for the gram.
That's why our prisons are full of criminals, because they usually do something dumb to get caught. The gang methods including dividing responsibilities to each member, such as renting vehicles, obtaining hotels or short-stay rentals, acquiring fraudulent identification, contacting fences, buyers of the stolen merchandise, and, oh yeah, someone to take a selfie and post it. That was someone's responsibility as well. Idiots, morons, enjoy prison. I mean, how dumb can you be?
Yeah, I mean, we saw, how much this rattled and affected guys, especially Joe Burrow, who wore this in the press conference. So I'm sure exciting for them to see these guys brought to justice, and a good laugh having them brought down by the cloud. Everyone should be afraid of the cloud here, and these guys are a prime example of that. Don't be afraid of downloading, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this show, though. Check us out on YouTube. Thanks so much. Enjoy the hockey tonight. We'll talk to you tomorrow.